Hello everybody, today I'm talking about another classic film. This is from 1988 and it is Akira, which is directed by Katsuhiro Otomo. This is an anime film and it's pretty hard to talk about. I usually try to, give a plot synopsis at least before I go into the nitty-gritty of the review, but this one I don't really know how to do because the plot is just so convoluted. It's a post-apocalyptic tale that takes place in Neo-Tokyo in 2019, and this is after the fictional World War III. After World War III, the city has tried to rebuild itself and become a civilized society again, but ironically, it is on the brink of genocide. Within this city, there's this kind of rebellious bike gang of teenagers, and the two main ones are Kaneda and his best friend Tetsuo. Towards the beginning of the film, Tetsuo is involved in a motorcycle accident. He's captured by the government and he's used in a test experiment known as Akira. This experimentation gives him supernatural abilities, which are so massive that he becomes kind of psychopathic and angry, and he's a weapon that could wipe everybody out. This is a dystopian sci-fi film. It is a detective story. It's an existential piece. It's a look at adolescence and growing up as a teenager. And there's a lot of political and social commentary in it, and it's got a lot of very thought-provoking ideas. For those of you, and I know it wasn't many, but for those of you who watched my review of The Magnificent Ambersons, another classic film I did a while ago, this review is going to be a lot like that because I kind of have the same feelings from Akira that I did from Magnificent Ambersons. I'm very torn when it comes to this film. I can see why people hail it as a masterpiece, and then I can see why other people don't like it at all. I think the actual idea of the experiment Akira is a brilliant concept that has so many interesting layers because it stands for the end of all things. In the reality of the film, it's just this test subject that's been preserved for years in test tubes and in chemicals, but it's also this massive force that humanity is constantly trying to control and get its hands on, and really they don't understand it at all. And through this means of control, we see how seedy the dealings are between politicians, the government, through the police force, all of these different things, which has kind of led us to this dystopian future. For me, my favorite storyline is the Tetsuo storyline, just because I think that it's the most human story, because Tetsuo, he kind of stands for a lot of us. He's felt disenfranchised his whole life and he always feels like he's been neglected. But once he becomes this test subject and he develops all of these powers, he obviously takes advantage of them. And it's kind of the manifestation of his anger towards the world that is coming out through this weapon, these abilities. It's when one person has so much anger, insecurity, or power, we are afraid of this power because it could, destroy us all, but at the same time we're seduced by it. So it's like the societal death wish. This anime is based on a very long, over 2,000-page manga that is quite extensive, obviously, but for me, I feel like the movie is only 2 hours long or around there, and you don't get a sense of the plot or the characters in the way that I wish we could have. To me, it just feels very rushed. When you've just got so much going on, it just feels slightly impersonal. The editing feels kind of sloppy at times. Something will happen, all of a sudden you're cutting to something else and you're like, wait, what just happened? And it feels uneven in that I wish they had spent more time on the ideas and the characters, rather than devoting so much time to the big finale, the big showdown between Tetsuo and Kaneda. But having said all of that, I have seen this movie many, many times, and it is one of my favorite animated films of all time. And that's saying a lot because I love animated films, particularly anime. Even though the film is extremely flawed to me, I find myself not minding so much as the film progresses. No matter how convoluted everything gets, it's like a snapshot of chaos. It's just giving us an overlook of all of this confusion going on in a society that is on the brink of annihilation. And of course, I have to mention the highlight of this film is just how it looks visually. It is so visually incredible. One of the most visual, most imaginative things I have ever seen. And even though it was made in 1988, it is still stunning to look at. I mean, it holds up extremely well. And what I love about anime films, particularly some of the older ones, like in the 80s and 90s, there's so much attention to the detail of everything. Every character in the foreground and the background, they're all there's so much going on, the details in them. You could just be watching the movie and go, oh, that guy back there, and you could write a whole story based on the way that he looks, you know, his hair, you know, tattoos, what he's doing, and you see that in almost every person that's just walking on the street. It's incredible. I have to mention the soundtrack because the soundtrack is amazing, and it contributes to why I think the film is so haunting. It's got this chorus, and it's very kind of tribal and ritualistic, which gives it that emotional quality. This is a very graphic movie, so even though it's animated, do not show your kids this. It will traumatize them. Some people think it's too violent. I don't think so. I think for me, the violence is kind of what gives the world that sense of danger and being on the very edge. And as I said, it definitely has its problems. It has a lot of problems, but I can overlook those. There's just something so creative and so special going on here that I can't ignore it. I love this movie. Had they taken the film and maybe expanded it into a series of films, like a trilogy, oh my god, like, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. That would have been incredible, because we would have really been able to see the depth and seen every plot idea really fleshed out. But regardless, it's still worth your time whether you like it or not. You have to keep an open mind about it, because it's not like typical films. It's not structured like a typical film. It is a different type of art, like most anime or most foreign films. You just have to kind of acquire a taste for it. And whatever you do, do not play a drinking game to how many times you hear Kaneda and Tetsuo screamed at the top of their lungs, because you will die. But that's my review. Thank you all for listening. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also check out my Facebook page in the link below that. Catch you next time.